Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou will appear in a BC Supreme Court today for the latest hearing in her fight against extradition to the United States. Meng was arrested at a Vancouver International Airport on December 1st last year after U.S. authorities charged her with wire fraud, bank fraud, and conspiracy. Then on January 28th, American authorities laid 23 charges against Huawei, ranging from theft to money laundering. On March 1st, Prime Minister Trudeau approved the U.S. request for extradition, and then 3 days later, Meng sued Border Services, the RCMP, and the federal government for breaching her rights. Joining us this morning is Charles Burton. He's a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. Charles, where does the fight go from here?
A very, very long way, I think, Anne-Marie. This hearing, the last time she was in court was a couple of months ago, is really to update the judge on the preparations, the kind of motions that will be put forward, and the kind of timing that they'll need to go through the different parts of the interaction between the prosecution and her defense. So, when she was granted bail, the judge noted that this process could take up to a decade, and as she hadn't been convicted of anything, I think that entered into the decision as to why she got such liberal bail conditions. So we're not very far along with this. Ms. Meng may not necessarily appear in court for this rather technical hearing, and when she'll be back to really get the extradition hearing underway will be determined this morning.
The international events surrounding this case are fascinating to watch. Since Meng's arrest, we've seen China detain 2 of our Canadian diplomats, sentence 2 more to death, and pull back on imports of both Canadian canola and, more recently, pork. Are we going to see more retaliatory actions from China?
Well, I think it seems very likely. It seems to be a staged process of retaliation, and we also have problems with other exports like pulses, beans and soybeans and so on, and that's causing our customers in China to be seeking alternative suppliers because of the uncertainty over how the Canadian product gets through the Chinese customs. So we know that the Chinese government has already started to inquire on local, provincial, state businesses as to what sort of interactions they have with Canada, presumably to provide a list of further retaliatory actions that China may take against Canada, hoping that somehow or other, if they make it hard enough for us, that our Prime Minister would be able to, call up the judge and have Ms. Meng returned to Beijing.
It is a very delicate position our country is in. While we are trying to maintain ongoing trade relations with China and with our biggest trading partner, the U.S., we are in a very tough position. It's almost like we had to pick sides right from the beginning. Our Prime Minister choosing to stick to the rule of law, as he calls it. So if Canada were to release Meng, how will this affect our relationship with China and with the U.S.?
Well, I think certainly if the extradition hearing finds that there were, say, irregularities in her arrest, or there's some other basis for thinking that the U.S. Case against her is not consistent with Canada's body of laws, then Ms. Meng would be free to go. I think the United States would have to accept that we have a country that offers a fair judicial process. It is not interfered with by political factors, and they would have to try again with her through a better case in future if she ever dares to set foot in a country which has an extradition treaty with the United States once she gets back to China. The other possibility is that, like other extradition cases we've had in the past, such as the one of Su Bin, who was the man that resulted in the arrest of Kevin Garrett a few years ago, she might cut a plea bargain with the United States and willingly go to the U.S. before the full extradition hearing process is complete. But in the meantime, things are very, very bad in Canada-China relations. I don't think our government really knows what to do to try and stave the damage that this case is doing to our Canadian citizens who are under very, very harsh conditions of brutal interrogation, and the 43,000 canola farmers who have just all of a sudden lost 40% of their market.
We will both be watching very closely what happens in a BC court today. Charles Burton, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good to speak with you.